All right, looks like we have everybody here. So, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the country today. It's morning or afternoon, but welcome to our HKL webinar on artificial intelligence or AI and after school programs. I'm Bill Fennessy, and I'm going to be your host today. Before we get started, however, I would like to thank Sam Piha and the How Kids Learn Foundation and Temescal Associates for providing this opportunity to share yet another important subject that will be critical in keeping our after-school field prepared and at the front of educational innovations that we will need to increase our field's value and best serve our youth. So before I further introduce myself and our incredible panelists, I want to share some foundational information and perhaps set some contexts. So, what is artificial intelligence or AI exactly? Um, Many people don't really have a good understanding of what exactly artificial intelligence is. So, here's a quick breakdown. Artificial intelligence is the process of using machine learning with accurate data analysis to solve a problem. Some might think that AI is just restricted to geeky guys who like numbers and computers, or that AI is figuring out systems and algorithms. However, these assumptions are wrong. AI is starting to become the norm of technology and will also make a giant impact toward the future. So the question is, why should we learn AI? Well, whether you're a student or not, but especially I would assume if you were a student, and whether you do or do not have an interest in technology, it's highly recommended that you learn AI for the following 7 reasons. One, AI is the future of technology and will be incorporated into our everyday lifestyle. We need to learn AI to combine it with other interests and passions. Learning AI leads to many opportunities in college and jobs. Learning AI will stay in your brain longer than the stuff you learn at school. You can learn artificial intelligence to improve your computer science and programming skills. I could probably use that. Um, AI is more than just systems and algorithms. It's also problem solving and understanding limitations. And lastly, you can use AI to make an impact within your community and with the public. So in conclusion, AI is something our students can and should utilize and learn and incorporate into their daily lives, education, and future careers. All right, so now let's move to the introductions and the opportunity to hear what our panelists have to share with us. First off, I am Bill Fennessy. I work for the California Afterschool Network. I'm a senior specialist in equity and quality. I've been in education for 25 years, 20 of it in the expanded learning field. Um, and a real pleasure to be here and share with you today. Next, I'd like to introduce Sean.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Petty. And so my role, I guess you could say, in after school specifically, I work for a company called Westat. We do research nationwide around many different topics, all over the governmental spectrum. My area of expertise, though, is in informal learning and how technology blends with informal learning. So I work in Texas mainly, helping 21st century programs, doing training and technical assistance to a variety of programs here. Why am I here today? I am one of those early adopters. Like the minute technology is released, I go buy it and try to explore it. And even though AI has been around since 1950 or earlier, the new evolutions of AI have been something that I've been working with schools here. And then I'm in a doctoral program studying specifically. My dissertation is AI and gamification in different modalities. So that's kind of me.
Thanks, Sean. And we also have with us Ang Nguyen. Ang, tell us about yourself.
Hello, Bill. Hello, everyone. So my name is Anh Nguyen. I'm currently an assistant professor. I will be a associate professor in this fall 2024 at Auburn University in Alabama. So I teach from undergraduate to graduate PhD students. However, in the last 2 years, I had a chance to also work with the K to 6 children. We have this K to 6 AI club hosted for free to the public at Auburn University. Then we get to explore diverse, options of programming, coding, robotics, and also a lot of AI activities that I would like to share with you today.
Awesome. Thank you both. Um, just a matter of procedure, the chat is open. We will open up with probably Sean speaking, but if you have any questions during Sean's presentation, if you would like to put those in the chat when Sean gets done or gets toward the end, we will be happy to answer those questions, and we encourage you to ask those because I'm pretty sure all of us have a lot of questions. And with that, Sean.
All right, perfect, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share a few slides, just 5 slides, just to keep me on target. And I'm going to ask Bill to be the super timekeeper to make sure I don't go on and on because A, I love to talk, and B, I love this particular topic. So, Bill, will you hold me accountable?
I sure will.
All right, excellent. Well, as Bill said, we're going to have a great opportunity to ask questions and chat a little bit more. My area, I work with schools a lot in a lot of the methodology. So I'm really excited to hear what Eng has to say about the actual application, although I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. The AI and after school, I really see it as kind of the perfect match. And if you're like me, you probably sit there and you're looking at the news and the digital media and the congressional hearings about TikTok and everything else going on. And you're like, where do I even start learning about AI and how does it affect the kids that I work with every day? And so today I'm really going to talk a lot about generative AI. So when you hear artificial intelligence out there and you hear everybody talking about it, most of the time they're talking about generative AI. And this is basically taking things that we put in and having some type of creative product come out. This is not, most of the time when we talk about AI, we're not talking about deep learning or machine learning or deep mind. Those are kind of in the realm of science fiction a little bit, although people, particularly out there in California with Google and some others out there, they are going that route. But we're not talking about the Terminator or about Skynet or about, as my wife says, stop getting these robots in our house because they're going to kill us in the middle of the night. That's usually not what we talk about with AI. We're talking about generative AI. And in terms of youth, we usually talk about these 4 kind of categories. And I just want to kind of highlight these really quick. And you probably know a lot about these already, so this will be very brief. But what we hear about every single day and what we have school districts banning and then unbanning later are chatbots or language learning models. The most popular that has been out there and you hear about it every single day is ChatGPT. And people are always like, what does GPT stand for? It's Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And it's just a fancy name to say language learning model. And so for those of us who had to write papers in college, we wish we had this, right? Because it makes life a lot easier. These are ChatGPT. Other models include like Claude, if you've ever heard of Claude. Another one that you've probably seen around used to be called Cortana, which was made popular in the Halo series video games, but now is called Copilot with Microsoft. If you are a Facebook fan or a Meta fan, you've probably heard of Llama, and that's their language learning model. And so these are basically, or BARD, this is when you program in text and it analyzes that text and it sends text back into you. And the thing about these models, just to share, is it's garbage in and garbage out. If you feed it with garbage, it's going to give you fancy garbage. If you put great material into it, you could get great material out. And so that's chatbots. Another item that we use in after school particularly are media creation. These are typically artistic elements. So you've probably heard of DALL-E. This is by OpenAI, and it's where you can put in text or various, items, and it will generate a picture or an artistic element that you can utilize. So I use this with after school programs or with high schoolers mainly to do things like tell me who your favorite superhero character is, but it can't be copyrighted because that is one thing that these models do is they stay away from copyrighted material. But I'm like, tell us. And so I was working with a young man who was from El Paso, Texas, and he said, my superhero would be the man of love. And I'm like, okay, before we put in man of love and have something generated just randomly, let's kind of define that a little bit. What do you mean? He's like, a superhero that goes around the community spreading love and kindness to everybody. And I'm like, okay, let's do something called prompting. I'm going to prompt you to expand that a little bit. What ethnicity is, because ChatGPT, for example, was programmed by people who look like me. You know, they're white, middle-aged, maybe overweight, maybe not, men usually. And so if you just put in something into that language learning model, you might get someone who looks like me. So let's define a little bit more. He's like, that's a great point. I want them to look like me. I want them to maybe be Hispanic or of a Latin heritage. I'm like, okay, let's put that in there. And he hit enter, and out of DALL-E came this superhero character with a heart, Hispanic gentleman, and he looked very normal. And he's like, well, I want him to look kind of like buff, like toned. I'm like, okay, we got to tell it to do that. So he put in there toned, and out came the superhero. So that's what these tools, DALL-E and Adobe Firefly, they can do. They can create imagery out of text, imagery out of other images. Then you have those that do music, like Boomy. Boomy back in the day is what we used to create little, back in the day when breakdancing was popular, it would create little spots for us to breakdance to. But now kids can create their entire theme song or their own music. And they can do it from text. They just put the text into Boomy and they say, hey, you know, I want to create a hip hop version of Beyonce's new song, you know, country song. I want it to say this. And then we'll say, well, I can't copy Beyonce. I can do something similar, you know, and you're like, okay. And it will produce music from text, or you can actually have students generate music on their own and upload their own music, and it can blend it together. But let's say they want to put that to video. Well, AI models now are doing video as well. Something like InVideo is a great tool. And so these usually are based on what's called a freemium model. So they start off where you get a certain amount of what's called a token. And as you use those tokens, when you use them all up, it's like, okay, now you can pay, you know, to have more tokens. So think of it, I don't know if any of you played like video games in the actual arcade, but like I was like the Pac-Man guru, right? And you would go to the arcade back when we had arcades, like physical arcades, and you would put the quarter up on the machine saying that you had next dibs. Okay, I see Herbert. You're like, yeah, I did that. You know, whether it's Donkey Kong or Pac-Man or Dragon Slayer, whatever you played, right? You would put it up there, and you got dibs on the next game, and you just couldn't wait for that person to lose their life in the game, so that you could take over. You know. That's kind of the same thing here. You have tokens, and then when the tokens run out, you got to buy more tokens. So it's a freemium model, and there are ways around that. Certain ones are free, like Adobe Firefly right now is in beta. So because they want to test your data and you have to give over the rights to your data, they allow you to use their tool for free. Why? Because your data is probably more important than what they could pay you or what you could pay them anyway. But Boomy, InVideo, or others. But let's say you're Lisa there, and Lisa, you have to present. I'm not sure if you work at a school district or in a nonprofit. But let's say you have to do a pitch to use AI in your classroom or in your program. You got to convince the higher ups. And Murphy's Law in our world, we only have 5 minutes to put a slide deck together, right? And they're like, you got to have it to me by the morning. Well, now Canva and Slidebeam, you can actually upload kind of some paragraph text about what you want your slide deck to look like, and it will produce the slide deck for you. and it will give you, you know, a series of 10 slides. It will recommend how to lay it all out. And so that's the artistic media creation that you could do. So Lisa could utilize Canva and have it develop her entire slide deck with some changes. You know, one caution I would say about media creation and chatbots, this is not meant to replace the human facilitator. Like, these are tools. So it's just like when the T1 calculator came out. And I remember when those came out, I was still, you know, in school. And they came out and everybody's like, oh, you can't use this, that's cheating, right? You can't use these tools because that's cheating. Nowadays, you can't even go into a math class without it. It's mandatory, required. And so pretty soon we will have these tools that are required, but just like a T1 calculator, if you put in the wrong algorithm into the calculator, you're going to get the wrong answer. If you put in crazy things into these AI units that we're using, you will get crazy responses. And then the other thing is a phenomenon called hallucinations. There is, because these chatbots, these media creation tools, these AI tools are built on the data that is existing. And the way the algorithms are written is they have to make assumptions when that data is not there. So if you have a gap in data, the AI system will actually kind of use its best guess to make up things. So this is where, if you saw in the news recently when Bard was released, they would put in something like, I want a picture of George Washington. And up would pop 4 pictures of George Washington. One of them was the traditional George Washington that we looked at, but another one was a George Washington that looked like he came from, you know, perhaps a Hispanic heritage or perhaps an African background. And it was all in the news that, oh, these AI bots are trying to force us to think a certain way. It wasn't that, it was that our prompt didn't give it enough data. We just said, produce a picture of George Washington. And while we have a traditional representation of George Washington because of who he was historically, the algorithm is programmed to give you 3 or 4 options. So it took a best guess, you know, and that's why it produced that. And in the world of AI, that's kind of called hallucination. It's filling in the gaps and it's hallucinating material. And so that's where people can get in trouble, so to speak, is if they just put in, if students will just put in like their essay question and they don't double check, don't really check the data, and they send it off to their professors or to their teachers. And teachers are getting real savvy, by the way. English teachers are starting to put hidden text in essay questions. So there will be a paragraph, you know, please write a 350-word essay about the status of, you know, the environment. But then the teacher will put the next line in white text. We'll say something like, highlight the word tobacco, you know, but the student doesn't know that. So the student copies verbatim the essay question, throws it into ChatGPT, says, write an essay about this. And ChatGPT is reading everything that the student copied, and the teacher had embedded this secret language or the secret instruction to write tobacco. So all of a sudden, the essay comes out, and it's like, the status of the environment is based on the tobacco use in the farms, you know, and everything. And the student, instead of checking their work like we would with any good tool, just verbatim puts it on a document and sends it to the teacher and automatically gets an F because the teacher's like, you didn't even think through this. So these are some ways that, you know, teachers are using, students are using. It's kind of crazy. But 2 more things before I kind of wrap up and turn it over back to Bill. And I'm going very fast. I apologize because I want to get to questions. And a lot of this is data that you can get from the wonderful documents produced by Bill and the team that Sam's put together. But another aspect.
Morning, how are you?
Oh, hey, good. Okay. Another aspect I'll throw out there is something that I'm really excited about. Tutoring is a big thing across the nation right now. There's a big focus on high impact tutoring. But I don't know about you, but some of our after school programs are resource strapped and can't really provide 1-to-1 or 1-to-3 tutoring like they ask. So when you're resource strapped like that, or your staff, by resource, I'm not just talking about money, I'm also talking about people, like human capital. We may have the money, but we don't have the human capital to be on a 1-to-3 ratio. So Sal Khan has thought about this, and Sal Khan has said, what if we use AI? So he has taken Khan Academy and programmed something called Khanmigo. And I really like Khanmigo because unlike ChatGPT or Claude or Bard or any of those, Sal Khan and his team at Khan Academy has programmed Khanmigo to not give the answer. So if you think about the way kids learn in tutoring, you're sitting with a student and you're like, okay, we're doing math class. And what's on the student's mind? The student's mind, like, I just want to get the answer. So they ask the tutor, they're like, Miss, hey, what's the answer to this? And if you just tell them, oh, 4 times 5 is 20, they're like, ah, thanks. And what's the answer to number 2? Right? Because kids are real clever. They want to get to the bottom line so that they can go play Fortnite over in the gaming club, right? So they got to get through their math homework. So the tutor just gives them the answers. They don't really learn. Kids are using chatbots like this. They're asking ChatGPT, they're like, hey, what's the answer to this? And ChatGPT will respond. The answer to that is this. But Khanmigo has been set up to take a pulse check on the student learning and says, okay, 4 times 5, let's break this down. If you had 4 apples and you placed 4 apples in 5 buckets and you were able to fill up all the buckets in 4 apple slots, how many would you have total? And it'll break it down so that now a student is starting to think in sequence and starting to think conditionally. And that's something that the other chatbots are not doing. So what Khan Academy is creating is a learning content system. And this is something we're going to see a lot in the future of education. Already, if you work in the pre-K space in literacy, there's a group called Amira Learning that uses AI avatars to teach kids, and it's adaptive. A kid learns as fast as they can learn. Some other programs are out there that do the same thing. And then my most exciting that I want to share with you, and this is kind of coming out in tools like Sora, which is a new video tool from OpenAI, or something called Cynthia or PlayHT. And this is virtual human representation. And this is where we start delving into the world of meta and virtual reality. These, what I call virtual human representations, these are AI that start to emulate actual human behavior by creating kind of virtual human characters or avatars. So this is where, so I've been on the line with Bill for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes now. If I was recording Bill, which I'm not Bill, but if I was, I could take Bill's silhouette, program it into a tool like Sora, or honestly use Firefly or something and create kind of an avatar version of Bill. And then using Cynthia or PlayHT, I could take the first 5 minutes of our conversation today, and I could use his voice and actually synthesize a virtual avatar of Bill. And with a lot of work, I could create what's called a deep fake of Bill. Or I could create Bill and I could have Bill, say pretty much what I programmed Bill to say. That scares the heck out of people, but it also is real exciting on some aspect. It scares people because we're worried about loss of identity, right? And believe it or not, there are starting to be digital footprints that are being programmed into AI to stop this from happening. And of all people we're learning from gangs. And that sounds a little crazy, right? But gangs or sometimes nefarious individuals have in the past done what we call encoded tokens inside of digital media, that if you know where it is, you can click on that token, it takes you to a different website, it takes you to a different area. And they're using a technology called blockchain. And with blockchain technology, Bill might be able to program his image where there is a blockchain token built into maybe his shirt as a fiber of his shirt. And when a deep fake comes out and Bill says something like, let's pay Sean $1 million for this webinar. And I'm like, yeah, Bill said it. Here you go, right? He could say, no, I didn't, because you can't authenticate my image. And so he's using the technology that we actually learned from nefarious individuals, and now are starting to create digital footprint to stop virtual human representations from being this deep fake that kids are getting very good at doing. So I wanted to give you a quick rundown of things that are out there that you're probably hearing kids talk about. And then I'll throw my last one, which I kind of hinted on, which is the virtual space. So whether you use Oculus or you use Hive, or if you're well off enough to buy the Apple device, I am not, unfortunately, and they haven't asked me to beta test it, so I don't have one. Or if you use Halo or any of the tools out there, the virtual world is much different than Second Life, which is what we used years ago to play in virtual reality. Now you can go into Meta AI, and Meta, or Facebook Corporation, has actually created avatars that will communicate with you. So I play Dungeons and Dragons like every Wednesday night. I have a guild and I'm part of a guild. And no one ever wants to be the dungeon master, which, is kind of the person who has to create everything and control the game. So Meta released its own dungeon master, and you won't believe who the avatar is. It's Snoop Dogg. So Snoop Dogg is our dungeon master in our game, and it's hilarious. He's like, hey, you come over here and you got to kill that guy, all right? And you're like, okay, Snoop, it's Dungeon Master Snoop. And he'll actually talk to you. And it's not him, it's an avatar that's programmed to be like him, but we're interacting with our Oculus headsets, and we're playing D&D with this avatar. So the sky is the limit with AI, but there are some serious concerns, and I know we'll probably get in those concerns when we get to the questions. But I understand that one of the questions I had is, what about secondary students? Is there any material out there? And I know that Aang's going to tell you all about the work that he's doing, and that's going to be awesome, and I'm going to learn so much. But ISTE, which is an amazing organization for technology, I see some head shaking, so a few folks know. ISTE has really latched onto, and it's ISTE.org, they've really latched onto AI and how we can make it safe, how we can make it usable, and also responsible, because AI mimics the creators. So if you are from a particular culture, that AI may mimic your culture, but if you're from a different culture and you're using AI, it might not it might not be representative. And so there's a lot of concerns about diversity and equity and inclusion with AI. So ISTE's taken a stab at it, and they created this guide. I'm going to throw it in the chat just for everybody. You can download. This is not sponsored by the California Afterschool Network. It's not sponsored by the Department of Education. This is just an ISTE resource out there. But it's got about 5 or 6 lessons in there on how you can use AI with secondary students. So I would encourage you, take a look at it if you can. And as I kind of close out and hand the time back over, I would say, hopefully I didn't go over time. I tried to stick to the time limit. Okay. One thing I would say is, if you're starting up AI, you want to get engaged in AI and you just don't know where to go, and you're like, what skills? I will tell you, the main skill that I think you need, or that your instructors may need, is just the skill of adventure. Don't, uh, It's not back in the day when we were kids, when our parents said, when you went up to your mom and dad and you're like, I don't know if you guys did this, I did this. And they were like, what if I put a fork in that electrical unit? You know, we would tell kids now, don't do that, right? Well, my parents were like, yeah, go ahead and see what happens, you know? And I learned very quickly not to stick forks in electrical units after getting shocked quite drastically. With I would say in a controlled environment like after school, or even in an education environment, we as the facilitators can really help kids be adventurous. And as long as, you know, we're in connection with them and we're not letting them do something in a closed room, as long as we're aware, it can really just be a benefit. So I'd say for your staff, they don't have to have a computer science degree or be like, you know, on Google's advisory board on the next evolution of Bard or Gemini. They just need to have a spirit of adventure. Like, I'm going to try this. So, you know, someone who's willing to try, I would say the benefits, I see the biggest benefits to AI as helping break down social barriers. And what do I mean by that? We are gradually going into a world, and this is Sean Petty's opinion. I believe that we're going into a world, if we're not careful, of the haves and have-nots. You could say we're already there. But this technology has the ability to either widen that divide, people who understand it, people who use it, people who really use it safely and responsibly are going to be in the haves, and those that don't are going to be in the have-nots. And we could create this very segregated society based on not necessarily race or culture, but based on knowledge. And that's scary. But the great thing is, individuals, regardless of where they come from, how much knowledge they have, the more they utilize these tools, we could break down that barrier where we could actually help those, you know, reintegrate society through the use of AI. So that's my kind of plea for AI. And then last but not least, if I was to give any advice, it's to do exactly what you're doing now. Come to workshops, meetups, share what you do. I don't know, Herbert, what Woodcraft Rangers is, but I'm assuming it's an amazing program with kids, maybe learning about the environment and about you know, responsibility and teamwork. I don't know for sure, but you know, as you implement something, or as Vanessa that just popped up on video there, as you implement something, hey, come back to build and share. Say, I did this, and here's how we're using it. Tell Ang, tell me, you know, and we will spread your message about how you're using these amazing tools for good. And then pretty soon, the students that are in your program will start teaching us on what we could do with it. So with that, I hope that was a crazy 20-minute random like dump of everything that I could tell you in that time. But I'm excited to continue chatting. So I turn it back to Bill.
Wow, Sean, that was a lot of very interesting. We still have opportunities to ask some questions in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand and come off mute, we can do it that way. I'm not particular either way. I do have a couple questions, Sean, though, to kick it off, or things to ask. When listening to you, and you talked about it being prompts, right? What you're asking the AI to do. And I have someone I work with who I think puts this in a very interesting way, but very succinctly. To use AI effectively, you have to know how to ask better questions. Is that essentially, I mean, a great way to interpret that?
It is. It's just like we work with kids, you know, whether they be in high school or they be in elementary, we teach kids the Socratic method of asking questions and really following up. And, you know, if you don't know how to do something, dig in and ask more questions. That's exactly what you do with AI. And the term that's thrown out there, you hear it a lot, is prompt engineering.
Mm,
And there's all these jobs popping up, prompt engineer. All that really is the person who knows how to ask enough of the right questions to be able to have the AI give you great responses.
mhm.
Although it is a hot job right now.
Okay, so let's look, and I'm going to get to you. And I hope I'm not breaching your questions, but when we got Sean here, it's a little hot. So you're talking about workforce there. I do a lot of workforce work, and I know they talk about AI, um, displacement of jobs. But I'm figuring where there's displacement, there's also opportunity for newer jobs with not maybe not a direct, but an opportunity. Talk a little bit, if you could, just a little bit about what that looks like for the workforce, or
Sure.
how that might impact that.
I love it. I'm not quite sure who said it, so I apologize that I can't attribute the quote to the right author, although I'll try to find out. But there was a great TED talk recently about it, and they said a lot of people are fearful of AI because it's taking their jobs, and
Hmm.
and we've heard this in the workforce forever, like industrial tractors that run on satellite are taking farmers' jobs, and this factory is taking farmers' job. And I will, history says that is true. There is a dip in the workforce that may be blue collar workforce or a workforce that used to do that job. But on the opposite coin, it opens up a whole new field. And the quote that this gentleman said in the TED Talk, he's like, those that utilize AI are going to find themselves in high demand versus those that are being used by AI. Like, you know, so I would say, in the best example I can give is before I jumped into education 20 years ago, so dating myself here, but I used to work for the Target Corporation. And I ran a distribution center, very different than education. But we were converting our manual labor of picking things off of the shelf to robotic labor, where a robot could lift an entire pallet off a shelf automatically without having that labor. Now, it took 4 people to do the labor job to pick things out of the shelves compared to one robot that could do it. So you would say, well, that robot just replaced 4 people. And that is true, except that I now took those 4 individuals and I was able to use the cost savings to re-educate them or retrain into managing the robot. Like, so now they're doing robotics. So one thing I'd say about AI is going to displace some fields of workforce. And this is particular uh, pertinent in your area in California right now, because as the minimum wage law just got increased, a lot of fast food restaurants are turning to robotics to replace labor. In the short term, it's going to be painful. There's going to be folks displaced, but programs like ours that work in this informal learning space and programs like ours that align with workforce development, if we take the cost savings that these organizations are having from the labor, and I'm not saying take money away from people, right? I'm just saying if we analyze the economics of it, we could retrain the workforce to now utilize this AI, which then raises everybody up a notch. And then now that people are focusing on the AI use, we will find evolutions of what AI can do, and then we'll have another workforce evolution. So short term, we're going to see displacement and it's going to take jobs and it's going to be painful. But we, as youth advocates who are out there working with youth, the more we can get kids into programs that now utilize these tools effectively, they can come out with jobs they haven't even dreamed of. That I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. I think you covered that extremely well. Thank you, because where there's usually a challenge, there's an opportunity, and I get the delay. But to your point, more important for our young people to know this, because that's the job opportunities they would likely be walking into. Um, and on that, one other thing I heard you say
Mhm.
uh, was basically that will be really important for everybody, but especially our students, to be early adopters of HR, right? I mean AI, right? Early adopters of it to get ready to get literate, right, or proficient, I should say, at it. And then the digital divide is also kind of what you're talking about in using AI, right? If there's a digital divide, you don't have the machines or the internet or the things or the piece, the logistics you need to actually do this. which again, serving the students we do in our areas of need, right? And that don't have all the services. This would be where our expanded learning or after school programs could play a really key role in closing that digital divide and providing that ability for early adoption so that they will be able to do those things.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe I'm an optimist by nature. I believe that all people are good people, and I just believe in the goodness of society. I know they're bad people, and I'm not saying that, but I just believe that inherently people are good. And and I think that as as we look at AI and as we look at the impact in getting kids to be early adopters, hopefully we can break that digital divide. It's a beautiful thing to see a child or a young student teaching a very, I call them young at heart, but you could say senior citizen, right? Uh, there's nothing better than seeing a 5-year-old teaching a 72-year-old how to do something on a tablet. It's amazing. All of a sudden, that 5-year-old is now the teacher, and the 72-year-old is the learner. And the bond that builds, it's just a beautiful thing. And I think we could break the digital divide as we utilize these tools. Now there are barriers. We saw that in the pandemic with students who were required to be home. They didn't have, you know, it's not even having access to the internet now. It's having high speed internet, right? And it's, I think, and this is much bigger than my pay grade, but it takes leaders and legislators and those that utilize government resources to, you know, invest in the right infrastructure. I'm part of, and you guys will think I'm crazy, but I'm part of a group called Internet Free for All. I believe that the internet should be high-speed internet should be free for all. You shouldn't have to pay. It should just be something, because research has demonstrated that if that happens, the economy will double, you know, just from people utilizing the internet. But that's just me, right? But I just think it's a beautiful thing if we utilize it correctly. And that's what we can do, because in the after school space or in the informal learning space, we may not necessarily be in the, you could say it's trappings, or you could say it's the system of that hardcore common core learning method that has to be followed. We can kind of deviate a little bit and experiment.
Awesome. Not seeing any other questions. I'm going to ask you one more. And I'm also going to ask this to Ang when I get to him, because I think both of you may have a different perspective from where you sit. And I know we have people here that are in education, and we all work with LEAs and districts and so on and so forth. I remember when the internet came, firewalls, no firewalls, what a district would allow, what they wouldn't allow. A lot of fear on their part. Some of it justifiable, of course, because they're responsible for that. Some of it, typically overblown, so on and so forth. What are the challenges you see there, Sean, and what are maybe some of the strategies you could give folks here? And then I'm going to ask you the same question the other, because you're on the classroom side and there's issues on that side of it too. So I'll ask you that last question, and yeah, maybe you can kind of give us a clue on how to address that when those things come up, because they will come up.
This is the fear by institutions about the internet or about
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah, about, districts are afraid that, right, if they open up Pandora's box here, what's going to happen, and they're going to be responsible for it and have to deal with it. Administrators are always gun shy. I mean, the same thing happened with the internet, right? Some firewalls won't let stuff in, and it's really hard to find somebody who'll talk to you about it or has any knowledge and be able to help you. So, and us being expanded learning or after school, we're not always the first one at the table. So we're going to need those strategies, right, to be able to actually help them get to this point.
So I'll share just my take on it, and I'm interested to hear Ang's, because I work a lot with state education agencies, and if you ever want to, I know we're being recorded, so I got to be careful. But if you ever want to be risk adverse, have a conversation with state education agency leaders. And for good reason, they want to protect youth, right? That's their goal.
Right.
But I'll tell a quick story. I think I'll just take a minute. I was giving a lecture at New York University, and this was back in 2007. And just to give you some perspective on that, YouTube was released in 2005. So this was, Twitter was just coming on the scene at South by Southwest in 2007. It was crazy time, right? And the big thing on everybody's mind back then, this will be fun, was how MySpace and Facebook could be used to really, help kids learn. And of course, MySpace is not really around anymore, and Facebook has grown into what it is today. But I was giving a lecture, and I was working with educators, and I was like, you can use your mobile phones, to teach Leet Speak, and you can use your mobile phones to connect to Facebook and and MySpace, and you can really make it more than just a wiki. You can make it an actual environment. And one of the people in the audience said, um, mobile phones and social media are banned in New York. And I was like, and I was dumbfounded. I was like, what? And I was younger. So I kind of got myself in trouble by sharing my thoughts on that. But one of the things I did was I started working with, I said, okay, if it's banned, let's find out why. And let's pitch a pilot. Like, let's approach the administrator and say, hey, look, I understand you got to protect kids. And right now, social media seems like the Wild West. Everybody's saying everything. People are worried about their data. Now we worry about our data, but yet we post what we ate for breakfast on Instagram, right? So that was the concern at the time. So I approached one of the barrows, the leaderships there, and I said, let's test it with one group of students, like one classroom. And we utilized, Twitter had just come out and they were really, popular. And we're like, everybody has to learn Romeo and Juliet in school. And I'm like, but kids hate Romeo and Juliet. Like, it drives them up the wall. I mean, I'm being stereotypical, but sometimes kids don't like Romeo and Juliet or Shakespeare. I was like, what if we made them rewrite Shakespeare, but in 140 characters or less? And we did the whole play on Twitter. Like, we just did it on Twitter. And that would be our test. We could test it. So we tested it. And it turned out that the kids actually, because they were, if you think about cognitive processing, they were taking the play, analyzing it, putting it into their own words of 140 characters or less. And they had to do the whole thing, which if anybody did that, you would memorize the play. So now they suddenly mysteriously did better on the exam, So suddenly when the administrator saw that the kids performed better, all of a sudden social media wasn't a problem. It was like, yeah, let's use it. What else can we do? Let's do the Great Gatsby in Twitter. I was like, well, miracles happen, right? But I'm like, I would say as you address fear, it's listening to the administrator, listening to the person's concern, listening to parents, listening to your own staff, understanding the concern, and then saying, okay, I hear your concern, but what if we test it? What if we try it? Could we do that? And you'll have people who say no. And if they say no, we live in the world we live in, we, give it another 2 months and try it again.
Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great information or foundational information. And I think information that's going to help us when we talk to Hang now about what he's doing with it in putting it into practice and in the classroom and actually doing work with the young people in that setting. So thank you very much. And Hang, I think we're all anxious to see where the rubber hits the road. How does it really happen?
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Sean. I learned an amazing deal of new tools from Sean and information. So let me share my screen
Please.
here. And I may miss the order of the question. So Bill, feel free to ask me if I miss any aspect.
Well,
Okay.
I'll try to contribute and see if I can tie some things on this side, but I'm sure you'll do fantastic.
So let's see, close this. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So okay. So here is the class that we ran at Auburn. So as a recap for those in case who you came late, I'm becoming an associate professor at Auburn University. I've been here for almost 7 years now. I got my tenure recently, and I have this dream of how can you translate my research of AI into the younger generations. And I asked NSF for funding, and then they gave us like $500,000 NSF Career Award. And then I used a portion of it to launch this program around 1.5 to 2 years ago. So it's like a 5 p.m. In mid day of the week, where around 20, it's a small scale. It's from, yeah, next slide. Around 25 students. The reason, and they are from kindergarten 6.0 all the way to sixth grade, but the average is around 2.3, like 2.5. So they are relatively younger side compared to like high school students. So I find it's really challenging and interesting also because I have like a 7-year-old at that time. So it's really interesting, and I have a 14 14 teachers and helpers. So this is excluding me, and they are mostly because I leverage the resources we have here. They are or college or actually graduate students um, in computer science. Um, and we contribute like 1 hour per week of activity, but this is excluding like our design time and thought process into what we should do and how we do it. This is the first time, and this is the first free public weekly program in Alabama not doing such a thing. And you can see we do a variety of things, for example, from robots. You can we let the kids program robots that can race each other. It can look at the track and then try to be inside the track while being ahead of the opponent. And then kids get to use mega blocks and then build mazes that they wish, and then they program the robots to solve the maze. Here's the navigate the maze, for example. And this one is, it's where you program a robot that can follow a track. It's like a train, and then once you see the door, it will inform another robots to open the door for it. So it's like two robots talking. And all of this is programming. And again, this is very, very young age, only average 2 to 3 third grade. So yes, you can do it. So one of the major activities, the set of major activities we do is robotics activities. Next slide. And then the second set of activities we do are game programming. So they don't come here to play games. Of course, they love to play games, but they only get to play it after they program. So for example, let me take one example. For example, here in this game, this is a Pac-Man in Scratch. So they need to basically complete the Pac-Man games and then train the AI to play the Pac-Man like they play. So show the Pac-Man how they would play, and then Pac-Man will learn the strategies. Like if you are on the left side of the ghost and you move up right. So basically you follow the way humans do it. It is very similar to chatbot following the way human talks. This is like following the way humans move. Similarly, this one also Scratch based. You teach the AI. This is AI shooting. The kids train the AI to shoot after like many games playing. So then the AIs will learn how to play, like which angle it should release the ball, so that at the end it will hit the bug. Here is the students will use AI to detect where the eyes and the nose are, and then they would go to internet, download their favorite characters. Here it's happened to be Pikachu, and then they overlaid it on using the coordinates detected by the computer vision. And this is me taking the photo behind the scene. This is another game where they play ping pong, pong game, but instead they play with their hands against the AI Pong. That is the bread here. And the ball will move based on the angle it touches the pedal, Yeah. So you can see they must program like 90%, and then they get to play 10%, and actually they get to test that program again and again. So the entire thing is like a mixing between playing the games and programming it. And then they use the AI or teach the AI to play this game. And then there are a set of other activities where it's not game-based at all. It is directly application. For example, this one is very similar to the Face ID on iPhone. If you use it, the kids will upload their own faces to the database, and then they will take photos of their friends. They really love to do it, and then the model will tell whether this is themselves or their friends, and then they will unlock it based on whether this is the owner. This is we talk about this, and this one is you can teachable machine learning by Google. You can try it. It basically you also can upload photos of different objects, different person, and then it will recognize it. For example, this is me. And all you do with teachable machine learning is you don't need to it is detecting the human pose, the skeleton. You just need to upload the photos, the data. You don't need to actually program. And the tools we use, there's a IBM developers who invented this machine learning for kids. They basically connected Scratch to IBM AI APIs so that they can enable a series of Scratch-based tutorials for AI. So, but the group of the students we address in this club, we have in this class here are from K to 6, so they're relatively young. So our principle is to first they need to have fun, and all the activities, regardless of whether it is AI related or not, it must be interactive. And then I think the second thing we want to solve them through all the activities is problem solving. The coding is also the major part. Now, if you want to build a similar type of club, the type of coding that you would need is, or I think you would need is basically any type of coding. For example, HTML, if you know how to do it, if you know how to do Excel sheet coding, it's also fine, or Scratch or Python or any simple type of coding, so that you know like how it works, how to instruct computers to follow your instructions. Then you can translate or pick up Scratch pretty fast. Scratch it's not hard. And then the AI part is more like here is like more like a cherry on top, or the icing on top of the cake here, because mostly we just using the existing tools, like for example, a lot of amazing tools like ChatGPT or a lot of tools that Sean already introduced to you. If we are like follow the leaders in the field, you can get a lot of notification or the news about what the new tools come out, and we just try it and let the kid try it, explore with us, because this changes almost every day. But mostly to make it fun and interactive, a lot of kids also like to actually work with physical stuff, not just like sitting behind the desktop. So we need to accommodate them with like iPad, and then also the real robots. We use Edison, which is also Scratch-based programming. You can program it to do solve a maze or detect objects by using Scratch. This is a sphere of balls. Okay, so what are the benefits of the program leaders or the teachers who join this program that I find from our experience is that actually, even though our team of helpers, we are very fortunate to help the actually computer science people to actually teach the younger kids. However, when they look at a set of amazing tutorials, amazing Scratch abilities, they are like, wow, because with Scratch you can do like things, for example, 3D virtual 3D games, physics games, AIs. You can draw diagrams, you can make animation. So this is basically anything that anyone would want to do at some point, right? So and you can do all of this using just Scratch. This is just opened my mind when I tried. Uh, and when the teachers they join this program, they actually learn about new applications of AI, because I only know about one thing, but then today I learned a lot from Sean as well. So, and we never had time enough to try. There are so many AI startups like come out every day. For the teachers, like for us, we learned how to explain the complex algorithms and the programs into simple language to the kids, and then help guide the kids. So if I have any tips for us, if you want to start an AI project, I think the key things we try is to have kids to have to help kids to have fun regardless of the activities. And because AI, it's more like we are learning how to use it, right? How to train the AIs to do the things we wanted to do. So, but the backbone is still like how to help them to learn problem solving, which is actually the base, and then the coding. AI is the third layer on top. So we need to design a series of, for example, interactive applications um, using either robots or games or augmented reality or virtual reality, like Sean was showing. And the, we also try to mix up robotics, game, and then some statistics sprinkle around to make it more fun and not just about, for example, games or robots. There are a lot of resources, but I will share a few that are mostly Scratch based here, that if you want to go and try like right now. There's a Scratch that, by MIT. This is probably most of you or all of you will know. The one I was talking about is Machine Learning for Kids. This is by IBM uh, programmer. It has, open it here. It has a series of tutorials that you can actually download and then follow for teachers. And this is a worksheet for a student. And everything is free, and you don't need to email or register or ask for permission. It tells you step by step already how to actually use it. So you can run it like today in your classroom if you want to, if you know Scratch already. And it has only two parts here: the Scratch part, where you need to program the game or the application, and the second thing is access to the AI. But it's really, really easy. You just follow the directions here. And there's the third one is NetBlocks. NetBlock is developing by one project at UNC State. It's also funded by NSF. It's basically enabling Scratch programs to be over the network. What I mean by that is that if you are familiar with Scratch, where is NetBlocks? Scratch, usually you only play like single player games, but this will enable you to have multiplayer games. For example, you can play tic-tac-toe with your friends, each of you on a different computer, but you must be in the same Wi-Fi network. Then it enables API for you two to connect, or it can call, for example, the Google Maps API, and then you can query where you are and then ask different questions to the Google Maps API. So this makes this happen. But the most interesting thing is you can do things over the network with your friends in Scratch. Kids, this is you also coding Scratch or JavaScript, and to achieve some tasks, like solve some missions, but in virtual reality. So you basically move your 3D characters in this 3D world. This is also really cool. But of course, the missions will not be a lot because, so the kids may get bored. So maybe you want to mix up different activities together. But it's still scratch based. And then the final thing is, because everything is scratch based, we try also physics robots, like Edison robot. This is really one of the more robust kind of robot. You can drop so that it's still fine and runs. You can replace the parts, and it's scratch based. And you can do a lot of things, for example, object detection, line following, and essentially it's still teaching the kids how to program the AI algorithm. It just does not teach the robots to learn from the data, but instead you hard code it, you program it. And finally, if you want like directional, for example, materials at a bit more high level, then there's this AI for K-12. I'm not sure if you know, but it has very, very useful breakdown guidelines for all the grades from K to 12 that you can follow in terms of what direction should I follow. Like perception should be introduced at the kindergarten or maybe at the 10th grade. So they break it down for you in terms of curriculum, but they do not have the actual hands-on like tutorials, for example, like the machine learning for kids. Do you have any questions, or Bill, do I miss any points?
Oh my goodness, I don't think you missed anything. I think you opened up a whole world for us here. I do have a couple questions to start. I don't see any in the chat yet, but and folks again can raise their hand. I think you talk a lot about Scratch. I have no clue. I'm the guy that really needs to learn all this. But that sounds like the availability is there. What is the cost? Let's just say the resources were incredible. What are the costs for some of those resources? I'm going to imagine some are free, but I'm going to imagine some are going to cost. What does that look like so programs can think about budgeting and what it would take to implement some of these programs?
Everything I have shared is absolutely zero cost.
Okay.
Yeah, we did not pay for any service. Maybe only one thing we paid is actually ChatGPT. But Scratch is free, and machine learning for kids are free. All these materials are free. Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Scratch, then I can open up something, for example, like this. This is from machine learning for kids. It is Scratch programs, and it looks like this. Is building blocks, and you can just drag them around, and you just need to create an account, and then you can start run a program, and it will be like, yeah. So you create games, animation, videos, everything. Yeah.
So this is being recorded, folks. If you didn't get a snapshot of that resource page, I suggest you look at that resource page because that's just an incredible amount of resources that don't cost you any money and you can run program with. Phenomenal. Looking at your principles and your pyramid, as it were, I noticed the box at the top is math. Help me make the connection, and maybe others here that know how you get. I mean, math. I know all of this is based on math, but what is the actual connection? Is there an explicit connection? There's probably a ton of implicit connections, but what are those in specific?
Right. Exactly. So the fundamental the principle behind all the AI these days that you see, for example, let's talk about generative AI in general. When it learns to talk like humans, the sky is right. So it needs to pick the word blue among all possible words. So essentially, it will learn to assign like high probability to blue because it has seen human talking about the sky is blue, the most, right? Among the sky is I don't know, red. So essentially, we want to teach the student math in here specifically is the statistics. So we want them to understand that this is about frequency, and when the model say the sky is blue, it's only up to some probability, some confidence scores. The model think this is the sky is blue, 90%. And then we want to teach them that, okay, what is the real frequency? This is what the model thinks, right? What is its confidence score? But the reality maybe is not 90%, maybe it's lower, right? So I think based on that, students will learn to sometimes trust, sometimes distrust, and then see what's going on. Basically, understanding there is a hidden number behind every AI's answer or predictions.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually also use a Scratch. This is very interesting. You can go to Scratch and find the game called Pick Dice. So for example, here we can let the kids roll the dice and then 1,000 times and see how many times they get a 6. Is the chance like 1/6 or close to it? So they will learn, for example, by rolling the dice more, the chance that if you hit 1/6 is larger. You get closer to 1/6. But if you roll it only 3 times, maybe you get no 6 at all. So the kids will know between like while the AI is trained well, it will match this true probability better than the AI who is not well trained. And the AI could be wrong because it may not get 1/6 every time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do have now some questions for you in the chat, Ian. Thank you very much. Ian wants to know, is it common to get an error code trying to access the machine learning for kids site? Could be a question for Sean, I suppose, or Ang.
I didn't want to get too specific. I plugged it into my browser here. It showed a SSL handshake failed. So it might be very specific to me, but it brought up then the question, hey, are these easily accessible on school grounds? I'm at home right now. Are there firewall adjustments? Are there back-end stuff that you need to do or hardware considerations that you need to look at in order to, make these plug and play?
Are you accessing the correct address, the machine learning for kids.co.uk?
I have machine learning for kids.co.uk, and I got a error code 525 SSL handshake. I did put HTTPS, ://www.
Because I never actually failed to access this. It's available every time.
Okay, it might just be my settings. Do you have issues at schools with firewalls or anything like that? Do you create permissions for any of these sites or?
Yeah, at school it's still fine. Yeah,
okay.
No problem.
Okay, it's probably just something on my end, and I'll try a different browser.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have another question from Dennison. When it comes to training the AIs for small robots to introduce robotics, what resources can she use, and is there a guide? And I do have to think the robotics pieces, though, do have do cost money, I would assume.
I see. Yes. So the resources I share. Yeah, here yeah, I mean the software here are free. Of course, the hardware here you need to purchase. I think here it's around $80 per one robot.
Okay.
Yeah, and the training the software is free. And the software is free once you buy the hardware, and there's no subscription.
Great. Was that helpful? Dennison, was that helpful? Do you have a follow-up question, perhaps? Okay, awesome. That was helpful. I just want to say, Ang, I really appreciate the way that you have set up your classroom model with the disguised learning, as we like to call it, right? And while they're building games and doing things, they're actually learning, but it just seems like they're having fun. So I just want to point out that you did a great job with that, right? You're making learning fun. That's all. If we can do it with disguised learning, it's awesome stuff. And tell me, do you think when some of our folks we spoke earlier about, our district or our lead educational agencies and their concerns. It did seem to me in looking at some of the resources you had, particularly maybe the last one you showed, the AI for K-12 piece. Would some of these things be good pieces of information to bring into the conversations with those educational leaders? Because I noticed it talked about what they could do and what the benefit was, and would those do you think any of those resources would be helpful in that conversation?
Right, so let me actually open the material. Here, it looks like the following.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So for example, it says, what is the sensing? Identify human senses. So compare human and animal perception. Give examples of how humans combine information of multiple modalities. Modalities here usually means like text, videos, audio, vision, and from grade 9 to 12. So basically, it's how you bring a concept from one lower level to higher level for each grade level students. Mm. However, I think this material is very interesting, but it's more for it's for the teachers who are already educated in AI in some way, that they can parse this material. If you are new and you just know coding, then this probably not too useful. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Sean, for that contribution on the hardware there and resources in the chat. Appreciate that. Um, any other questions from our participants today for Ang at this point?
Hey, Bill, it's Ian here. Are we able to get the slides or access to the actual links just so I can double check that I'm putting it in right?
I do know that we're recording the session, Ian, and the recordings are typically available within a day or two of this. So other than maybe putting some of those resources back up and having you take a screenshot, it will be available. The whole presentation will be available to you in a day or so.
Okay, great.
And we'll want to share it with everybody we can, right? So there we go. All right. Sean, you've sat through this part, right? And any thoughts that come up for you, and Ang, any thoughts that come up for you before we close out?
I'm excited to listen because just like Ian was saying, I was copying down like notes and I was like, okay, capture that link so that I could bring back. So I just appreciate all the resources. It's great to have methodology and then practice, like so that you can learn the methodology and then actually put it into practice. So I really appreciated the presentation. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you. Ang, any final thoughts from you or things something you'd like to leave folks with?
Yeah, so I think what I've learned from exploring this with the kids is, let me see, I need to share, is the is like you ask the question like why we need to teach the kids AI, right? It seems like obvious thing to everyone needs to learn about AI, not just kids these days. But what do we really want out of the program with the younger generations? So I think the first thing is we want them to know how to use AI so that they can improve their daily activities. The second thing is we want them to know how AI is being made, right? By letting them train the AI themselves. So this is like, to me, is a wow opening when I first tried. Even though I'm an AI researcher, I thought that only me is privileged enough, or these people in the research communities are privileged enough to just train AI. However, no, I'm wrong entirely. Actually, the kids these days, they can collect the data. For example, a lot of text, or they talk to the machines and machine will basically use their voice and then mimic them, right? So I'm just I was eye open when I saw this ability. For example, with the scratch dot machine learning for kids. So the kids can train the AI to recognize their face, their voice, and then, or search for the things that they want. I think this is very, very useful. If they know how the AIs are being made, then they can better use them in the future. Also, better means that you can they can have more deeper questions, right? Mm. So my kids usually ask me questions, and I will say for a lot of it, it's like, let me ask Perplexity AI. Before it was Google, now it is Perplexity, which is another ChatGPT on top of the Google. It will search for you actually. This is another brain searching for you to give you the more quality data than you searching yourself. Also in a faster time. So now the other day the kids come back to me that maybe I can search this question on Perplexity as well, and then he will ask like one day he comes up with a new question and he will ask, maybe can this be solved by AI? And then he'll go and then find the answer himself. So usually when you tell them that this is possible to solve by AI, so the kids learn it. But the next day, once they get to train, like what can be done with AI, they also can figure out that the new problems also can be solved by AI. And then this is amazing. And I think the one most important thing is that they need to know when AI will fail. Like kids love like playing with the AIs and how to break them. For example, there's a problem called a binding problem. If you go to ChatGPT and then ask it, draw me a man in a red shirt and black glasses. So what you find back is actually a mix of black and then red color in the glasses or the shirts. They actually cannot separate these two at the moment. So the kids will be amazingly fascinated by like, oh, I can break the smartest AI in the world. And then in the future, they will like basically be safer and then, be cautious if they actually take the outputs from the AI.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Thank you for answering that question in the chat, Sean. Ian brings up another question. Some fear, we touched on this a little, some fear comes from the unknown, right? How do we manage the appropriate use of this type of technology? Any suggestions? Is it similar to what we're doing with computers and internet now, or is there a departure from that? Throw it to the both of you.
I'd be curious to hear Aang because you're actually doing it in a school, so you're dealing with it right now, whereas I just give kind of advice. So, what's the reality?
Oh, actually, if you some fear, for example, of getting inappropriate response from the AI, harmful content, is that right? Or
I think probably just more on the user end, right? Like, so the AI will come up with what it comes up with. It's based on the questions that are asked. And so just asking continuing questions. So that goes to the intent of the user. If the intent of the user is to use it in, sort of, means outside of the parameters you kind of set, like a lot of this stuff, it's really hard to supervise, manage, and stay on top of. Like part of the fear here is that these are some skills that could be used for nefarious purposes or mischievous purposes or whatever that might be. I don't even know what my question is, but how do we sort of be in front of that or be aware of it at least to manage it?
right. So I think you're absolutely right. Fortunately, all the big companies are thinking very hard on this, and they have a huge team they call reliability or safe AI. Basically, they do usually they do two checks. Let's say I'm a bad guy. I try to make the Firefly or the ChatGPT generate like harmful content, child wearing a gun, right? But if you try to type the text and generate a child wearing a gun picture for me, there are two checks usually. It will look at the text. If the text is inappropriate, it will reject immediately. Let's say you are clever. You're describing, hey, draw me a gun in this position and draw me a child in that position, and then together they compose into a bad picture, right? However, there's a second check that look at the picture after it's generated, and it may also reject it. So if you need to be super clever to pass both checks, And all the companies are increasingly very, very well aware that this is a huge problem. So they are lean more towards the like over protecting their generation. Like you can see recently, Google had a problem of over correcting for the gender for the demographics bias. So all the male generated were like black at some day by Google Bart. So there's a huge issue, but people are aware of this. So I think there is some fear. It's probably never go away. However, as a community together, if we open our ears and then trust each other, I think we can move along. That's fine.
And I assume you might get, thank you, that's helpful. And then like the, you get some permissions from parents as well, or are parents involved in this process in any way, shape, or form?
We asked parents to sign a consent form for them to work on our activities, for the kids to work on our activities. Yeah.
Great questions, Ian. Thank you. Really great questions. And I imagine some of the management in the classroom is similar, though, would it not be, to kids being on computers and tablets, and because they can pull inappropriate materials? Hopefully the firewall catches it, but we all know that some of them are smarter than the firewall. But I imagine, I mean, in the space, it would be a similar type of monitoring or by the instructor.
That's a great question. Are you talking about like safe browsing or just for the AI?
No, you have a classroom with 20 kids. They're either on tablets or computers. They're online. There's one instructor in the room, right, or a program leader, and part of their job is to monitor what kids are doing. So if somebody's heading in the wrong direction, they catch it, before they get there or before something happens. I'm just wondering, in the actual physical space in doing this, would it be similar to being in a computer lab, an internet lab, and that kind of, direct supervision, I guess, is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so I can share what we do is on iPad, you can set the parental control. If you set the age, it will, for example, allow the kids to download or open the programs according to your age group. That's one thing. Of course, you can turn on the safe browsing on the browser, and then lock it. Do not let the kids, download any software unless you allow. They can request, and then the request goes to you, and you can approve it. So I think there are multiple, and these things are free, not a parental control app at all. But of course, I'm not saying that it is 100% safe. It's hard to say that.
Of course.
I would add to that too, at least from a larger like system perspective. There's a reason why social media and other companies have set 13 as kind of that age limit. It's not that if you turn 13, you're mysteriously responsible, right? But usually 13 is a good generalized stereotypical age where you can start to allow kids to be a little bit more exploratory. So what I've seen is like the younger elementary K through honestly K through 6 or 7 are very highly monitored, like in small groups, doing more the robotic coding, more of the Scratch programming or the blocky programming that's like, ratio. But when they get a little older, when they're starting to use ChatGPT or other programs, which as Ang mentioned, are starting to build in security protocol. Like you can't ask it to draw a gun for you. It will tell you that you can't do that. Now, are there ways around it? There's ways around everything, right? But it's getting harder and harder to make it do crazy things. But one thing that we do, or that I've seen districts do, is treat it kind of like we do esports. When you run an esports club, usually the esports instructor has a very large monitor system, and you can flip over to the kids' monitor anytime and kind of watch over them. I've seen districts do that. I would caution about too many blocks on things. I mean, obviously you want to put blocks on things because you don't want anybody doing anything crazy. But on the opposite coin, you also don't want to stop innovation. So it's a fine line. And it's different all across districts and states because everybody has a different view, but that 13 age, like highly monitored versus a little bit more autonomous. But I don't even know that I'd let college kids be totally 100% on their own, because it can be interesting if not without a human facilitator. And that's the caveat. We can't just like put it on a computer and let kids be alone. Like there needs to be some type of guidance, you know.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. Ian, you good? That took care of it, buddy? Right on. So we have one more question from Herbert. Because of the media and what students may have misconceptions of what AI is, do either of you have a simple explanation to define AI that is used in the tools and programming you presented today, maybe to a fourth grader? Obviously, we saw the one Ang had for the administrator or the bigger one, but explanations for the youth we're working on so they can grab hold of that, right, and hold on to that.
Is this a question for me or for Sean?
Either one of you, both of you, anybody in the audience that hasn't answered, everybody's enabled. So yes, either one of you.
I'll throw out some thoughts, Ang, if that's all right. Like, when you're speaking to like parents or administrators or those who are looking for like the educational background in it, I really do go back to the ISTE standards. Like the ISTE.org has some really good materials that explain kind of like how AI can be effective, but also talk about the dangers of AI, and they address that. When you're talking to kids and they want to know, some of the big entertainment companies like CBS, there's CBS Kids. CBS Kids has like they've hired these youth influencers to do like videos, and there's one, I'll have to find it and put it in chat, but there's one of a young lady baking a cake, and she's like, here's how AI is like a cake, and they link it. And so it's kind of that, if you remember back in the day, we had Channel One. It's kind of like that Channel One concept. Like they teach AI. So I'll find the link and put it in there. But that's kind of how I utilize. Then of course it's still just because every day there's a new media article about how the Terminator is coming to destroy us, you know, and so it's going to be a constant re-education all the time. Yeah, Ang, you think differently, or Bill?
I'll let Ang talk.
Yeah, I think talking about fear, right? Fear of AI, or how can we enter this dark, exciting, but also kind of dark and then seems to be moving area. Yeah, I don't have much to add to Sean, because it's more like we need to understand this is like security. Security is always a problem in for the software or the physical systems. If you're going to build a big building, right, there will be vulnerability, both from the physics point of view, but also from the malicious point of view, and disaster, everything. But you want to, why do you still want to keep building a larger, longer building? You know that it has a more chance to collapse, right? So I think this is the same way. Do we want to build longer, higher, taller buildings or not? Or do you want to stay in the first floor the whole life, the whole, next many generations? So if you want to climb up, then we have to embrace the challenges. And then, but the only thing is we need to just be well informed, right, by the risk. But there's nothing to fear, actually. Just accept the risk.
So let me ask the question perhaps a slightly different way, Ang. You have a group of youth in your program. I think you said the average grade was 2.5 year or grade 2.5 or 2 to 3.
Yes.
I think maybe what they're looking for is, how do you explain what AI is to those young people, right? I think it's maybe the translation for a fourth grader or a third grader, second grader. How do I tell them what AI is and what they need it in terms they could understand it at this point, at this level, right, that they're at?
Fourth grader. Yeah, I think it's assuming how much they know about programming. But to any I think elementary kids, I would say AI. If you talk about ChatGPT, AI is a talking machine, and it learns to talk like humans. It has read the entire internet, and then it can tell you back what it remembers. Now it could remember a lot of them. It also may misremember, right? But just like human, it may say something, but it may be wrong. Sometimes it's confident, sometimes it's not. So we need to be aware that it's very human-like in many aspects, but it also, just like human, it can be wrong. And so in that sense, and yeah, that's probably the how I would explain to the fourth grader. Yeah.
That damn mute button caught me. Got pretty well today before it caught me, that mute button. When it comes to the ethics of AI, how do we go about initiating that conversation? And maybe, Dennison, you could say the conversation with young people or the conversation with administrators. What maybe you could come online and clarify that for me a little bit. Oh, she's with the kids. Well, God bless her. All right, we'll hang in for a minute. If we don't have any other questions while we're perhaps waiting for her to get back, I want to share my screen with you, please. We have some resources and some things I'd like to share with everybody before they go today, and that'll buy a little more time. Let me. There we go. Everybody can see that, I'm assuming, at this point. And well, great pictures of those guys. What I really wanted folks to see, though, was that, Tomato Scal and How Kids Learn does have a briefing paper learning about artificial intelligence and after school. I want to make sure this gets on the recording and that everybody present has an opportunity to look this up. Very good paper. I read it a couple times in preparation for this, so very informative. I think everybody would like to have. And then also, and I'll come back to this if you all need it. And again, it'll be in the recording. Also, more webinars. How Kids Learn and Temescal has done a lot of webinars, a lot of them on very current subjects like AI, right? Stuff right at the fore of what we're doing. So I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to get a chance and look at these or get these down. And of course, again, it will be recorded. So let me leave that there for a few minutes. With that, any final thoughts from our two incredible panelists? I want to thank you both. The information has been phenomenal. It's been wide ranging and we haven't lost anybody. So I think everybody, I think our participants were very engaged today. I want to thank them for that as well. But any parting thoughts, Sean? I'll go with you first and then Ang and we will close out.
I just think it's funny. I just have to point out. So I read the paper, or I read the brief before, in preparation. I think it's real funny in the credits. They even credited Chat GPT. They were like, part of this present in the spirit of AI, part of this brief was written by Chat GPT. I love that because I was like, put to practice what you're talking about. That's great. And then the fact that you gave credit. If they ever do become our overlords, we can go back and be like, but we gave you credit, or whatever. So that's great. But no, just to kind of thought, I thank you so much for allowing me to present a few thoughts, and for listening to Ang's presentation as well as all these great resources. I think this is the future, and I mean, everybody's saying that, right? This is the future. You hear it all the time, but in reality, we're at one of those pivotal moments where technology is advancing faster than society's evolution. Like, technology is going so fast that the more we can delve into it and help kids, but also help ourselves, and it becomes a tricky situation. I have trained a lot of instructors who suddenly learn how to code in Python and then get snatched up by Intel or X or or these other companies nearby because they're making 3 times what I could pay them in education, right? So it's a tricky thing. But on the opposite coin, how great is it that we're feeding into this industry and helping people have better lives? But I would say, in wrapping up, though, there is no right or wrong answer. It's just, learning and moving forward and doing it for the good. I think Google used to have a theme that only do good or be good, right? And I really like that because I think that could be our theme. Like, if we utilize these materials, focus on the ethics. I know the question about ethics. Of AI and the usage of AI. And then I love how Ang tied it back to, the building sequencing from problem solving all the way up to math coding at the very top. That really is key. And it just goes to show that reading and math are still critical skills, especially with all the technology coming out. So this is just the cherry on top, as he said. And so love it. But the greatest learning we can do is folks coming back together and sharing what they learned and keeping this conversation going and seeing each other at conferences and saying, hey, I applied that, or hey, could I share what I did, so that then we could spread the message and we can learn from each other just like we do in the space we work in. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Sean, thank you. Yeah, outstanding presentation today. Ang, take it away.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I think you said the best ending message. I learned a lot from this webinar as well. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for the host of How Kids Learn. And actually, it also motivates me. After the webinar today, I will go to GitHub and create a page, because there are more resources that we have tried, but I don't have time to actually categorize them into and then give a brief description. What I show only today are really the scratch base, because we're coming from the computing perspective. But if you want to teach the kids just how to use AI, there are more tools. Yeah, thank you so much for the great audience today. If you have any questions, you can contact me at my first name, last name.me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you both very much. Thank you all for being a terrific audience. Thank you for your really great questions and participation. And now you guys are well informed to go out into the field and start knocking back those dominoes we need to knock back, right, to get things going. And lastly, once again, thank you to Sam Piha, How Kids Learn, and Temescal and Associates for being leaders and keeping us in the lead in after school. So with that, I give you, I guess, 17 minutes of the gift of time. We're a little short of noon, but that's good. It's what it would bear. Thank you all again. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at more of these webinars in the future. Bye-bye.